The human body is now we're moving in that direction. And I would even speak to, if you think of mRNA and the mRNA vaccinations, what is the M in mRNA? It is a messenger, it is a signal, it is a frequency. And the last piece I'd say is we are on electrical devices. Our electrical devices are run by a software program. The software governs the hardware. The human body is the same way. So whatever signals the body is receiving, that's what makes the downstream biology.
Your organization has achieved a significant dent in vaccine mandates.
We didn't do the science. We didn't do the clinical trials. We didn't do the post safety. But one thing we know it's rare.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Carrie Bakeford. I am Outreach Director with Texans for Vaccine Choice, and you are joining us for another episode of Shot Callers. Today we have a very exciting guest as we continue to explore different ways to express health and take charge of your healthcare decisions and the way that your body, the quality of your life. We have a wonderful practitioner named Pierre Andre. He is an energy tester, educator, and creator and founder of Scalar Solutions, a company that develops scalar energy devices. Pierre helps clients identify and correct energetic imbalances in the body using scalar technology and education and diet supplementation geared specifically to help them. Pierre operates as a licensed member of the Professional Wellness Alliance. He started working with clients as an energy tester in 2010. Pierre is extremely passionate about helping people overcome health challenges tied to specifically vaccine injury and also tapering off of psychotropic medications. I am so excited to get to have this conversation with Pierre. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Pierre, energy tester isn't a title I hear all the time. And before we really go anywhere else, tell us how you got here, because this isn't something you'd normally discover in a textbook.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go further back a little bit, what started my journey was many years ago. My dad was diabetic. I ate a standard diet, things of that nature. And then I started consuming health content many years ago about disease because I was told by the doctor, who didn't have answers about why my dad was diabetic himself, how that whole process worked. And the doctor pretty much flat out told me that I would be diabetic. And I didn't want to accept that. And so fast forward, I studied a lot of things around natural health. And which led to the 2020 situation. I was coaching people on and off around the things that I learned. And my niece actually ended up being injured with what happened around the vaccination sort of thing with the COVID vaccine. And I just felt compelled to reach out to Texans for Vaccine Choice after successfully being able to assist her in her recovery and others. Because, excuse me, because my original plan was not to, I was about to go on with my business and not help others, but I felt like people need to know that there's options out there. And it's part of too, a way for me to keep I'd say the legacy of my teacher, Dr. Dan Nelson, alive, where when we talk about energy testing, it sounds very woo woo, which we'll get into, and I'm going to share resources to help demystify that for people. He taught me about 80% of what I know and really helped me help my mom. My dad has passed on, but my mom is still alive today. And so that was sort of the journey. I felt compelled in seeing that Texans for Vaccine Choice was doing work around really health advocacy. It's not just the vaccinations. It's really all about people knowing what options are out there and then making a true informed decision.
Yep, absolutely. And making sure that you're legally allowed to make whatever informed decision you choose to make without consequence. So I love that story of passion and deciding that you really wanted to just find a new way to really help people recover. I mean, I've heard from numerous fantastic health practitioners that healing is a frequency. And what you're saying really goes along with that idea that healing is a frequency. One of the things that I get feedback on from a lot of people in our patient advocacy is this growing frustration with the allopathic health model in general, where they go in with these really intense symptomatologies and these things that are really impacting their quality of life, and they're trying to do the things they know how to do to be healthy, and they're told your labs are normal, right? So what made you realize that so many people are suffering and what you can do about it, even when they're told your labs are normal?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's actually tied to my own personal health journey with how I met Dr. Nelson, with what he taught me. He was actually not a traditional doctor. He was actually a quantum physicist. And so the whole way we look at the body is from the aspect of the energetics, right? The signals, the
Yeah.
information, the input of the body is what decides how the chemistry works. So it actually does make sense that people's labs will look, quote, normal, in that there's two things happening. One thing that's not actually taken into consideration, there's slight deviations of whatever normal will mean because of people's own unique biology. And then number two, what people are not considering when they're looking at blood work, for example, that's a snapshot in time. So if you think about it too, when people go to get high for being declared high blood pressure and whatnot, normally when people go to the doctor, they're in a stress state anyway. So our emotional stress state, our energetic state, informs the biology of our actual blood. And so when we're looking at it like that, it sort of makes sense that things will be normal per se based on their own definitions. But really, when you view the body energetically, now we're talking a whole different language. For example, if you think of a car, I would say if you're driving a car and the check engine light comes on, what do? That's the signal. Symptoms are a signal that we need to do something. And as you continue with whatever interventions, if that check engine light doesn't come off, and then the symptoms don't disappear, then whatever you've done, even if it's considered the gold standard, clearly hasn't worked. And that would also have me speak to something that many people might not know. Back in 2017, the FDA approved what's called Abilify MySight, which is just pretty much it's an ingestible biosensor the size of a grain of sand. So you take that biosensor, it gives you your stomach activates the electrical frequency of it, and then a patch that you wear helps to read that signal wirelessly to transmit what's coming off your smartphone to whoever is tracking that. So they're leveraging and actually formally approving now I guess you could say almost biodigital medicines for the human body for people to ingest. So it's just not as made public per se, but yeah, absolutely. The human body is now we're moving in that direction. And I would even speak to if you think of mRNA and the mRNA vaccinations, what is the M in mRNA? It is a messenger. It is a signal. It is a frequency. And the last piece I'd say is we are on electrical devices. Our electrical devices are run by a software program. The software governs the hardware. The human body is the same way. So whatever signals the body is receiving, that's what makes the downstream biology.
Imagine a health assessment where the practitioner sits hundreds of miles away. No blood drawn, no physical contact. Yet this remote evaluation claims to pinpoint precise nutritional deficiencies and map out severe organ stress without a single piece of conventional medical equipment. This is the realm of information medicine. The entire practice rests on one specific premise. The human body operates as a communicating bioelectrical frequency network, making chemical processes secondary to an underlying energetic signal. We are not here to validate the medical efficacy of these claims. Instead, we are conducting a forensic look at how this movement constructs its authority. Practitioners rely on a highly specific credibility stack. They point to decades-old U.S. patents, peer-reviewed medical journals, and modern FDA-approved digital telemetry to justify their methods. When you examine this stack piece by piece, you see exactly how alternative wellness frameworks build an internally consistent logic to bypass standard diagnostics entirely. Today, you can find this operating in practices like Scalar Solutions, based right here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But the diagnostic logic they use traces directly backward to a heavily documented methodology codified in the late 20th century. We can break this architecture down into three distinct layers: a 1990s medical patent, the clinical scaling of that patent by a prominent nutritionist, and a recent FDA approval of digital pills used as a modern analog. The practitioners using these techniques actively invite skeptics to look at this documented science. They want you to read the papers. Their authority does not come from modern machines. It stems from an unbroken, multi-decade chain of theoretical citations. to understand how they practice, we have to deconstruct that exact chain. The foundation begins with Dr. Yoshiaki Omura. He is a physician and cardiologist with traditional biomedical credentials, including affiliations with Columbia University and the Heart Disease Research Foundation. In the 1980s, Omura invented a specific diagnostic mechanism he called the bidigital O-ring test, or BDORT. The mechanics are remarkably simple. A patient presses two fingers together to form an O-ring loop. A trained practitioner then applies standardized outward pressure to test the strength of that loop. The driving theory is that the body's biofield responds to specific substances or energetic signals. That response instantly alters the integrity of the nervous system. The ring either holds strong or the muscle resistance fails. In 1993, this exact physical process was granted U.S. patent number 5188107. This is the crown jewel of the information medicine argument. Practitioners point out that this patent required over 7 years of strict patent office review, surviving validation by 11 independent medical experts. To bolster the patent, the literature cites 23 separate university studies demonstrating the efficacy of BDRT in clinical settings. They also highlight intense institutional media coverage. In 1992, Japan's Tokai Television produced a 2-part science documentary showcasing the method being used in major Japanese hospitals and medical schools. Holding a formal U.S. patent elevates BDRT from an isolated energetic theory into a legally categorized instrument. That piece of paper provides the indispensable foundation for all the remote healing frameworks that follow. The second layer of this stratigraphy belongs to Dr. Robert Marshall. A clinical nutritionist and biochemist, Marshall took Omura's work in the 1990s and pushed it further. He transitioned the mechanical finger test into a proprietary full-body system known as quantum reflex analysis, or QRA. Marshall mapped the O-ring reflex response to specific physical reflex points across the human body, each corresponding to major organs and glands. By combining the finger test with these mapped points, QRA claims to identify precise nutritional deficiencies and systemic stressors, bypassing chemical lab analysis entirely. Over a 35-year career, Marshall treated more than 50,000 clients using this exact diagnostic framework. He utilized his daily national radio broadcast, Healthline Live, as a massive public education vehicle to mainstream the QRA methodology. Marshall's primary contribution was taking a patented mechanical quirk and engineering it into a scalable clinical protocol that could rapidly process thousands of patients. In the modern era, practitioners make their most aggressive logical pivot. They point directly to the United States Food and Drug Administration. In 2017, the FDA made history by approving the first digital pill, a standard medication with a built-in ingestible biosensor. The drug is called Abilify MySight, developed through a partnership between Otsuka Pharmaceutical and Proteus Digital Health. Inside the tablet is an electronic sensor roughly the size of a grain of sand. When swallowed, stomach acid dissolves the pill and activates the sensor. Once active, that sensor broadcasts an electrical frequency signal outward, transmitting directly through the human body's internal tissue. A bandage-like wearable patch on the skin detects that internal signal, records the physiological data, and transmits it wirelessly through the air to a smartphone app. This is not an isolated experiment. There is a growing pipeline of over 30 similar drugs, including the eTect-RX ID cap system and clinical trials by Gilead Sciences. Information medicine practitioners use this exact technology to make a strict logical deduction. The FDA has officially confirmed that the human body functions as a bioelectrical frequency communication network. Here is the analogical leap. If a pill can transmit a biological frequency signal through the body to a receiver, they argue a trained human practitioner can read those same bioelectrical signals. The source literature explicitly states that this makes biofield reflex testing the logical extension of multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical science. Information medicine brilliantly uses conventional medicine's own cutting-edge telemetry as a Trojan horse. It leverages the FDA's approval of digital sensors to validate its core premise, that human biology operates on frequency. Modern practitioners synthesize the Omura patent, Marshall's clinical scaling, and FDA telemetry into one unified philosophy. This leads to the use of specific implements, such as Scalar tools, including the patent vial and specialized Scalar homeopathic pellets, designed to interface directly with this bioelectrical environment. If you accept the premise that the body communicates via frequency rather than just localized chemistry, the theoretical conclusion becomes clear. Physical proximity to the patient is no longer a hard requirement. In this paradigm, the practitioner's training and precise clinical protocols serve as the actual receiver. The human becomes the instrument, explicitly replacing the need for conventional medical hardware. By design, this system operates firmly outside the bounds of licensed medical diagnoses. It positions itself strictly as an educational biofield support framework to avoid regulatory friction. The architecture is structurally sound. It begins with the 1993 patent, scales through decades of clinical mapping, and borrows modern digital ingestibles to validate its claims. Mainstream observers often dismiss remote healing as magic or guesswork, but the practitioners themselves view it as a rigid, historically cited science based on biological frequencies. Information medicine has constructed a highly resilient, internally consistent epistemological fortress. By leaning entirely on frequency and bioelectrical mapping, it allows practitioners to confidently assess clients and thrive entirely outside the boundaries of the conventional medical establishment.
Okay. I mean, that whole conversation really highlights some of the shortcomings in traditional allopathic diagnostic tools. Like blood work, as you said, is considered the standard, but really, you're right, normal is a spectrum. And if you don't have a good baseline for where your body is, you may be well out of range of your normal and still be in the normal range. Also, all lab tests have limits. So sometimes something that is big enough to create symptomatology and feelings of disturbances in the body isn't quantified enough to show up on lab work because that has a certain threshold of sensitivity. And you may be very symptomatic and really struggling on a cellular level, but that's not being able to be demonstrated in, numbers on a, diagnostic lab test yet, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, and I mean, one of the most disheartening things, if you think about it, the consumer of said healthcare, the customer is supposed to be right. If they continue to complain about, most people know we try not to go to doctors and deal with health professionals unless we have to. Why would
Mm-hmm.
they keep coming back and complaining about an issue that the blood work is saying totally normal is normal? It doesn't sort of
Yeah.
logically make sense. Meanwhile, they have to pay, right, for these visits and things as they're trying to
Yeah, and
get the
the
issue
the
resolved.
lack of curiosity that seems to run rampant sometimes through traditional models of healthcare that are like insurance based. And I understand they have to move people through conveyor belt style because that's the way that system is set up. But individual health expression can vary widely. And if humans are having some type of symptomatology, those are messages. Like your body is letting you know something is happening either here or in something that resonates as here. And your body's out of balance and it needs to do something to figure out some way to get back within balance. So knowing that symptoms are messages, and let's say you're a vaccine injured person, what are those messages in your body when you're experiencing some of the most common vaccine injury symptomatology? The generalized nerve sensations that are off, the brain fog, the joint pain, the systemic generalized symptoms. Like, what do you speculate that those messages would be saying to those families?
Yeah. And to answer this question, I would actually take a step back to ask people to first grasp the concept. Nobody is deficient in any pharmaceutical compound to start out, right? So we have to actually first ask what are what encompasses what's generally in vaccination. So I would ask people to go study and look at those ingredients. Because, for example, the mercury is said safe in a vaccination, but when it's in a fluorescent light bulb, it's dangerous for us to breathe it in. If that light bulb breaks, it's dangerous for us to breathe in that mercury. But supposedly, learned wise people said that injecting it into the bloodstream is wise, which sort of, if
Yeah.
you follow the logic, that's not consistent. If it's dangerous to breathe in, why is it therapeutic to put into my bloodstream? And so, with
Yeah.
that being,
No, and
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I think the reason that continues to happen, as you and I have talked about numerous times, is because they're not telling people what the ingredients are. And they're working so much to try and hide people's ability to really look into what those ingredients are. and to really understand the effect that they have both individually and synergistically within the body. We don't even have very much data at all about the synergistic toxicity of those ingredients combined in the body. But I think people just, they aren't aware. Like,
Yeah.
I know that you have had interactions, I have too, where people are just blown away to discover the truth that's been sitting there in front of them this entire time, you know? Yeah.
Which is part of the beginning of this conversation where we talked about like whether it's Texans for vaccine choice or in general, you have to have true informed consent. So if people are not
Mm-hmm.
aware of what they're putting in their bloodstream, do you truly have
Right.
informed consent, or are you leaning on and trusting that somebody declared it to be safe? Right. So now, with that being
Right.
said, part of why the joint pain, a lot of the issues that occur, part of the standard of how a vaccination is approved. For example, like what happened with the COVID vaccine is they call it, it's based on if it stimulates an immune response, right? If something is happening, if they can activate some sort of significant biological spike, that's sort of how they vetted and was saying like whether it's the COVID vaccine or other vaccines are actually safe. But when you look at those ingredients, and look at some of them individually and historically, like the mercury, we know all sorts of health issues that occur with mercury. For example, in the health profession, I think I don't know if it's current now, but dentists for a very long time was one of the professions that was most likely to commit suicide because of the mercury poisoning. And so
Mm-hmm.
here we have some documentation around individual ingredients that we're putting in people's bodies. So based on that individual documentation, it shouldn't be no surprise the brain fog and things like that. What is happening is oftentimes people's mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, gets highly, highly inflamed. The immune system gets
Mm-hmm.
activated by all of these foreign things that it literally does not recognize. Remember, messenger RNA, but it doesn't
Yeah.
recognize that message. The human body recognizes the message of, say, an amino acid that it's familiar with, like glycine found in food, but something concocted in a laboratory, it doesn't have a reference point for. It views it as an enemy. And then all sorts of things start, all sorts of biochemical reactions start happening. And each person is slightly different with what they're going to manifest as in terms of the issues. But one thing that I will share that should be part of health screening, which I think why, right? Because one of the common questions is like people ask, how come I vaccinated all three of my children and just this one got hurt? People forget about the concept of methylation. How do you handle your poisons? Somebody who's a poor methylator is more likely to be injured because their body cannot filter and deal with all that is coming in at once. So I would argue that anyone who's a poor methylator is highly, highly likely to more likely manifest and be, quote, vaccine injured versus somebody who isn't.
Yeah, and it seems like a poor methylator would also struggle with other types of environmental toxicity, like cleaning
Yes.
products and artificial fragrances and food that was, full of antibiotics and, vegetables full of, pesticides. It seems like that person who is a poor methylator would struggle to deal with those toxicities too. And maybe for that person, that vaccine, they just can't sustain that level of toxicity along with the ever present level of toxicity that already exists in our environment through the air, through the water, through food, through everything you can possibly think of these days. So, symptoms are messages. Lab work isn't who you are and doesn't give you always an accurate prediction of where your symptoms are coming from or how to move those symptoms into, a different type of expression with more health and less suffering. So let us know the magic. Walk us through like what you actually do. How is it that you assess someone, when you're not running lab work, when you're maybe not even in the room with them, when someone comes with a myriad of sometimes what seems to be not connected symptoms? How do you kind of work with new people and pull it all together like you're so good at doing?
Okay. Yeah. And this is where I'm gonna give people some homework, but I'm gonna try to make this as simple to understand as possible. But then I want people to, as just like what we should be doing with vaccinations or any medical intervention, people should go behind what I say and do your own due diligence about what I'm about to present
Yeah.
to you. But before I answer that question, also, you just reminded me the book Our Chemical Lives by she's not a doctor, Catherine Fromovich. I would highly encourage people to look into this because this book details how chemicals that's been continuously been approved over the years is impacting our health. So it's tied to the methylation conversation. In general, this is
Okay.
why they've done studies where when they have families eat all organic, for example, for X amount of months, which means less poison exposed to the family, people tend to feel better, right? And so now,
Hmm.
moving on to answer your question, first, what I'll start off with, which I think oftentimes it starts to connect with people, think of the cloud concept, right? You know how I'm on an iPhone where you can pay and have a service to store your photos and everything in the cloud. Well, your health state
Hmm.
is the same way. So from a picture, and checking for what we call bioresonance, we can, because your health state is tied to that cloud sitting up there, we can pull out that information. Just like I could have a picture from 1998 or whatever have you stored on my iPhone. I mean, stored in the cloud, and then I log in, and then I can pull it out. And so, what does that look like? There's something called quantum reflex analysis where Dr. Amura, I hope I'm not butchering his name. It's hard to say his first name. Yoshaki. He's from Japan. And in 1993, he was actually granted a U.S. patent for what's called quantum reflex analysis, biodigital O-ring, where they did formalized studies in Japan and in other places. They did about 23 university studies where basically the net is they had the practitioners test people, take notes on what they were finding for their health state and cut and compare that to the traditional MRI machines and things of that nature. And the reason why this is called BDART. So if people go to bdart.org, they're launching
Hmm.
a whole website and thing like that and whatnot. But if you look up Dr. Omura QRA, you can find that information there, the patents, the studies, everything. And it took 7 years for them to grant him the patent because this was so mind blowing for them. But ultimately, how that ties into my work is when I give you the cloud example. So if I'm looking at a recent picture of someone and asking questions, I can use my own body as the resonance, as to establish resonance. Like, what is stressing if we had a picture, say, somebody named Billy? You know, how is the health state of Billy's thyroid? Is his thyroid very stressed? Is it strong? What is afflicting his thyroid? Because in the picture, just like if anybody's ever been to any kinesiologist, they'll have vials, right, of like the electromagnetic signature of, say, heavy metals and things like that. And so the
Hmm.
way I build out a profile of what's going on with someone energetically is through this sort of modality that's been vetted, where we're going back and forth to see what's stressing the person, what specific organs or glands, and also too even emotionally. So when I check, sometimes a person might have an issue, and the real stress is not biochemical; it's emotional. And so then we have to try to help the person release that. And one free thing that is totally free, before I forget to put it out there, I always ask people learn to practice gratitude. When you practice gratitude,
Hmm.
and people can look up the studies on this, you
Yeah,
help
there's so
alkalize
many
your
studies.
body, yes, and create
Hmm.
better biology. So part of what's happening
Yep.
that's making us sick is our emotions. They have a tremendous impact on the sort of biology that we're going to create. And what is that tied to? Your blood tests. Remember what we were
Yeah,
talking about
one of my
earlier?
favorite books about like the chemical biology of emotions is called Molecules of Emotion by Dr.
Mhm.
Candace Pert. It is an incredible book that really breaks down like the neuropeptide of your feelings and how they travel through the body and how they're. I mean, it's a fascinating book that really changes, at least for me, the way that I viewed the impact that emotions and emotional patterning had on our physical space. It's a really well done, just fascinating read that's right in alignment with what you're talking about.
Yeah, and with the B door thing, so for example, in
Hmm.
demonstration, when we're trying to help a person, because it's a person when they do the O-ring thing, if you stay locked in, that means that area is strong. Any negative emotion weakens the body. Like in Chinese medicine as well known, excuse me, the liver will hold on to anger. So a person's liver will be creating poor chemistry, and it has nothing to do with your diet, has nothing to do with your lifestyle. it literally could be tied to your emotional state anger. And when
Mm-hmm.
people, I forgot what the statistic is, separate from like from a something like dramatic happening, car accident, laceration, things like that. The majority of hospital visits is actually stress related, and many people don't
Mm-hmm.
know this. And here's the irony: when you're being screened in the hospital, they do not screen you for your what they don't take a snapshot of what your stresses look like. So you're coming in for a panic and an anxiety attack, but actually that's tied to what's been going on the last 2 or 3 months for you. But what happens
Mm-hmm.
is often then we check your blood work, all right, this is high, this is high, this is low, and typically you're going to get a medication.
Yeah. I mean, typically, as in almost all the time, unless they tell you that your symptoms aren't real and you're fine. So, okay. I mean, I encourage our audience to go and research this further because I know that it sounds atypical from the other diagnostic methods that are really common in our culture. But Pierre has done this with so many people and it's validated through so much other research, just a different way to look at discovering what's happening in your body. And what I love about this idea of self diagnosis or diagnosis through a practitioner like Pierre is that it's accessible and doesn't require needles and doesn't require other people's interpretation necessarily. You can learn how to discover more fully what your body needs through this modality, right, Pierre? Is that what the implication is? Is that you use it, but also your clients can learn what their own body resonates with long
Yes,
term?
all my clients, and there's videos and stuff that people literally can go look up. There's demonstrations of this. If you were to go, say, into YouTube and type it in, where people are doing demonstrations teaching
Yeah.
this. And what I always remind people, it's all about practice, practice, practice. And it's like muscle memory, where you're practicing for a
Hmm.
sport or anything else, and then you will tend to start to find it to be very reliable. One caveat is, now, if you're in a high stress state or you've had some alcohol or something like that, you've thrown your own body sensitivities off, where then I would say it's not going to be
Hmm.
very reliable. But if you're in a
Right.
relaxed, open state and you've been practicing, odds are you will be able to tune in even for yourself and not need someone like me. And oftentimes, here's one of the fun facts that I kid you not that I've seen occur many a time, where when people ask me to assist, I often tell them, don't really tell me much about you. Let me draw
Hmm.
up my stuff. Let me see what your body is saying. Remember the cloud concept, and then I'm gonna read it back to you, and then we'll compare notes. And I've found people who were formerly diagnosed as diabetic, thyroid issues, autoimmune, done in blood work, and then they're comparing the detailed report of what I'm testing them for, even toxins. Everything has a resonant
Hmm.
frequency. And then the good news is too, when we discover what that is, God is so gracious in creation that we have answers. There are things that I find universally that I want to share, that I would highly encourage people to look into,
Okay.
especially around, again, the vaccination issue, because this is a bigger conversation. Whether or not people pursue me, pursue another practitioner, I want people to really dive deep and take control of their own health. And one of those things would
Same.
be, for example, Dr. Richard Hansler, PhD. This is literally a quick read. Fight COVID-19 with melatonin. I don't even know if this book even 100 pages, full of peer-reviewed research around. Most people know melatonin actually is something for sleep. It's actually an
Hmm.
antioxidant. My personal assessment, when I use the QRA method, I believe melatonin is more powerful than glutathione. And so we know it for
Oh,
sleep. And as
wow.
we get older, we make less. And it's huge for reducing oxidative stress, getting heavy metals out of the body, things of that nature. Or he has several books on melatonin. So that'd be one of the main things that I found, like when I was dealing with my niece and others, I would use with clients. So I'd highly, highly recommend people look into that. But now the one caveat, same thing, is you're going to want to make sure you find a reputable product, because the supplement industry can be the Wild West. And if you don't use something
Yes.
that's really effective, it's not going to be because you're going to say the melatonin didn't work, even though there's all this documentation. And I'd say, well, if you went and got something out of CVS, that might be the
Right.
problem. You're going to want to go with companies that have a track record, per se. So that'd be one of them. Number two, which is part and also in my Hall of Fame, is astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is a carotenoid. Dr. Sam Shepard. If people look up Dr. Sam Shepard, he has a whole website that he's put together with, they spent $80 million NIH studies all about how it helps with inflammation, cancer, autoimmune diseases, because of it works on the outer ring. It's an electron donor, so it works on the outside of your cells and even on the inside to really stabilize things. An electron donor basically means it helps stabilize your cells. That's why when we have antioxidants, when an electron is stripped off of your cells, you get oxidative stress, and that's the body's wear and tear and breaking down. And
Hmm.
astaxanthin is one of the most stabilizing plant. By the way, it's a food. It's a plant food. Now,
Nice.
thankfully, we have the convenience of being able to get it as a supplement. And again, be very careful. I'd say about 85 to 90% of what I've vetted myself personally, I do not like, I would not use. But if you use a good one, I'm not gonna plug any companies, anything like that. That's it. It's just tremendous. Same thing. Tons and go look at the NIH research around that. I think it's tremendous for vaccine injury, athletes, things like that. Because one of the number one things we're talking about, brain fog. Every serious disease is always going to have a high
Hmm.
inflammatory issue, and astaxanthin, well researched, for helping with that. So those would be two of my favorites.
Okay. I love tips to help yourself feel better, and they are readily available. Like, I've seen those everywhere, but like everything else, do your research, discover if it works well for you, if you want to try it, and then try and find the highest quality version that you can. I mean, so I know that astaxanthin and melatonin are some of the others, but what are some other, like, naturally occurring compounds that are God created, designed for your body to absorb? Coming back to, is it just melatonin and astaxanthin, or are there a few others, or a different way for people to look at what those compounds are? Because our bodies are designed to live in alignment with nature, which means if God created a problem, He probably created a solution. So, what are some of those compounds that you really think bodies in general respond well to?
I got, let me see. So I got three more, well, four. Four, because
Okay.
these are sort of my all-time favorites here.
Your greatest
MSM
hits? Yeah.
sulfur, yes. Again, and you know why
Hmm.
sulfur is so important? It's the third most abundant compound found in the human body. So it even helps pets, by the way. People have me helping their pets because a lot of the issues our people's dogs have, human beings have. And one of the key things I would point people to, there's a lot of studies on sulfur. There's a great lecture by the Rodion Clinic, I believe. You can find it on YouTube. It's really good, about 50 minutes worth of your time spent. But sulfur is what helps you make methionine. It is
Hmm.
like the glue to help with proteins, will help your body make proteins. It helps you make more glutathione. So part of why I love the sulfur is, right, we're living in strenuous economic times. Many supplement companies are making glutathione, and people don't know about real biology, where if you are consuming enough sulfur, which is about a third or fourth of the cost of a good glutathione product, you will
Hmm.
not only make your own glutathione, but it's tremendous for the health of joints. So people who have
Yep.
joint pain, it oxygenates the body. It's a carbon. It's high in carbon and oxygen, and we are carbon-based life forms. So garlic is
Yep.
high in sulfur, cruciferous vegetables is high in sulfur, broccoli, any of those are one of the popular detoxification agents that you can buy as a supplement. And I don't use it because I find the sulfur is not only more economical, it's why it works. There's something called sulforaphane. It's found in broccoli. And but you heard,
Hmm.
did you hear the name sulforaphane? So if you're
Yep.
taking the sulfur, you're already covered. And that is huge. So that's one of my all-time favorites. I personally use it. So it helps me be able to work out every day. Tremendous and a foundational piece to the human body. So see, it's different. It's not a herb. Just like how I mentioned
Right.
melatonin, most people don't know when you're young, you make lots of melatonin, which is a huge antioxidant. That's why you can live sort of a little reckless with your lifestyle. But as we get older, we make less. Yeah, we make less because melatonin, we're
Yeah.
making so much, we can clean up a lot of poor habits. But once you start to get up my age, You can't live the way I live, say, at 20, 22 years old. So
Same,
melatonin
Pierre.
is,
Same.
yeah. So melatonin, the sulfur, astaxanthin, and then and this is one of my personal favorites, lithium orotate. Not to be confused with
Okay.
the medication. The University of Buffalo recently did a study, which I would argue the only reason the study, quote, failed is they treated it like a drug. Lithium is naturally occurring in nuts and seeds. It's actually found in food. Here in Texas, where we
Mm-hmm.
are, mineral wells, there's a water product called crazy water people can consume. So you don't even have to go get a supplement. Same thing as the Wild West. There's some companies doing it right. There's some companies doing it wrong. But it is a
There's
nutritional
even
compound.
bath salts that have lithium in it now,
Yes,
the natural lithium or orotate. Yeah.
it is a mood stabilizer. So most people, when they
Mm-hmm.
hear lithium, and here's the irony, right? They think of a battery, or they think of the psychotropic medication. The carbonate is the problem. The carbonators, they take the lithium and they bind it to a toxic salt, which is why you have to get your liver tested and your kidneys because it poisons you. Meanwhile, you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
do the supplement, drink the crazy water. It's a funny name for it. But lithium, in my estimation, same thing, using QRA, astaxanthin is anti-inflammatory to the brain. Melatonin is anti-inflammatory to the brain. I find lithium is not only anti-inflammatory to the brain, which means to put the fire out, it actually even helps clean your brain. I kid you not.
What
I
what
find that
I
you
don't
have what's
doubt.
called the
What I love
glymphatic
about your
system.
list is that
Yeah, go ahead.
all of those things are very readily available in,
And
good
economical.
concentrations, and yes, and so economical. Like, people spend sometimes $800 or more on monthly supplements and magic things when these compounds work very well for most people, for most things, and they're very
Yeah.
economical.
Without, like I said, I'm not naming companies. I'm going to give y'all a clue. The companies that tend to have it most reasonably priced, which is cheaper than that super expensive stuff, odds are those are the better products. That's going to be my little clue for people. But it's all over the place. Many people, and part of it too, to answer the question, well, how can something so powerful be so economical? Because it's so readily available. Companies
Mm-hmm.
make more money selling like herbs and things like that. But these
Right.
things have tremendous efficacy to really help people. And as I said, part of why I always mention these as well, people can literally go. There's a book too called The Promise of Lithium. There's many resources and documentation around everything that I'm talking about. So I always tell people before you dismiss what I have to say, you might want to do your due diligence, just like you like to do due diligence in purchasing a car. This is your health.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have your
Yeah.
health, what do you have? So before you dismiss it, because
Well,
it
and
might,
you can get a new car, but you can't get a new body. And what I
no.
love about what you were describing too is making a point of how prolific and readily available these compounds are. It's almost as if we were designed to be given a world that has what we need to express full health. We just have to take utilization of it. And this is a way for us to take utilization of what we're meant to have as a part of our lives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for those, and this is something that I always really share in my work, and I forgot I was going to mention it in the beginning. Part of my journey, in full disclosure, because my traditional background was social work and counseling. When I found my teacher, Dr. Dan Nelson, I was actually suicidal. And his belief in God brought me back to accepting Christ as my Lord and Savior. I push no, like I always tell people Christ wasn't ashamed of me and welcomed me. So that's always going to be part of what I share, what has inspired me and shown me how to walk in my purpose. And that's no shade on whatever else other people choose to believe, but it is a huge piece of why I truly believe I'm able to assist people the way I can assist them. Because I watched a man who, in my opinion, probably had an IQ of 220 or whatever beyond, and the heart that he has for people and the way he spoke about God brought me back to God. And that's part of why I honor his legacy to this day. Like I'm tearing up right now as I discuss this. It is if I don't bring that piece into this, I don't want people to think that it's really me. I try to tell people, look, I am a vessel. at the end of the day. No, I might not have the peer reviewed studies, I might not have the title, but I always tell people go talk to the people who I've helped. 90% of people who come my way is literally because of referral, because they know I've helped said person and now they want to see what I can do for them.
We're all here for a reason
Mhm.
to do some things. So I'm so glad that you found your purpose. Where can people find you? And for the exhausted families listening, what would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, people can find me most readily. I'm accessible through my website, pierreandre.com. There's like 3 different tracks. I have a track if practitioners want to work with me around some of the things that I'm doing, but families in general, pierreandre.com. My Instagram is at not underscore my rest. Yeah, on Instagram. And then now really, especially to speak to the family piece, is the first and foremost thing I would encourage people is to not be discouraged. Your health is the most important thing that you have because you can't enjoy this existence without it. And to be what's the word I'm looking for? Ferocious and doing your digging and research and to try to assist your child. Recovery is possible. I'll share just a quick story. I have somebody that I'm going to be doing a separate conversation with. To my shock, is back in college because she's about 80% recovered. She was COVID vaccine injured and managed to, I coached her, same modality. And these things that I talked about, these substances, I would say that'd be a huge foundational place to start. Your health is your responsibility. So please start learning about what astaxanthin can do for you and your child. The role lithium plays in your health, the role sulfur plays in your health. We have a right to take care of ourselves and to quote unquote self treat. So that's where I would absolutely start out for people. And I am, and one piece that I'll share too, because I am a giver. I love to help people. Look, even to me, it's more important that you get the information, and then if you're the type of person to take it by the wheels, I'm happy to pass on information for to you if you get in touch with me, so that then you can do what you need to do for your child. But that's what I would say. Please don't give up because if you do, then nothing. That there's a saying I heard a gentleman say: if you do something, something may happen, right? Versus if we sit and do nothing and continue to accept the status quo after you've turned over all of these various tables and nobody has answers for you. And then if you quit and stop, then now you guarantee that there is no hope. But you must keep
Yep.
pushing on. So that would be my message to the parents.
That's a great message. We are all right now being called to be fearless, to find those things to help empower ourselves and connect ourselves deeper with the people around us, because that right now is what our world is missing more than anything else. Is that deep connection and that remembering that we're here to live in joy together, expressing health by using the things that nature has given us to thrive. So I am definitely looking forward to more conversation with you, Pierre. And I hope that all of you listening today will dig deeper and explore further all of these different ideas and ways to look at healing in your body in new ways. You're here to express health. We're here to help you find lots of ways and make sure that nobody but you calls the shots. I am Carrie Bigford, Outreach Director with Texans for Vaccine Choice. This has been another episode of Shot Callers, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Shot Callers podcast. Please, if you found value in this content, rate us and share the podcast with a friend. It's a great way to get the message out and to empower everyone to make informed decisions. Until next time, never forget, we are the Shot Callers.